Hey everyone, and welcome to Rslash ProRevenge where OP ruins his ex-girlfriend's life. If this is the wrong subreddit, tell me and I'll move it. So I caught my ex cheating on me with someone I really hated because they were a dick to my friend. So one day I opened my laptop for the first time in a few months. She used this laptop while she lived here for a few months. It's been 3 months, maybe more, so I decided to let it update and I needed to use it after to look some stuff up. Then, as we all know, Discord opens on the last chat you're in, so of course it does so, and the first message I see has "I love you" and hearts. So I don't want to overreact, so I decide I want context, so I scroll back to see all these messages of her cheating on me and being hypothetical with him, asking if we weren't together and stuff like that. As well as one time she said she knew he was asleep, so she asked me if I wanted to call instead. The gem of the whole matter is when she said she would fuck him on my birthday to make it sting. She said that was from a song, but that doesn't make it excusable. Revenge. So I did what I thought was right. I texted her best friend, who was also a good friend of mine, and asked if she knew that my ex was cheating, and she was surprised but didn't spare one of the 21 screenshots that I had. That's a lot, but oh well, I was heartbroken. So my ex just lost her best friend, who she talked to more than she talked to me. As well as told stuff to her she had no right knowing. So for some reason I decided to stay with her for a few more days. Then I was at work and we decided to call, and I had to work up the courage for 45 minutes before I asked if she wanted to call me because he didn't want to call, and told her I knew everything. She sounded confused, but I hung up. You can't play me like a damn fiddle like what I saw. So I texted her brother right away to tell him that she likes to cheat on people and sent him the screenshots, and he called her out, so now it's him and I vs his mom and sister. I wasn't done yet. I messaged as many of her friends as I knew and told them what had happened. Revenge. Aftermath. So the next few days consisted of me getting texts from other friends that I promptly sent the screenshots to, and they stopped talking to her. Then her mom texting me, which she said, and I quote, "My daughter isn't big on second changes, but I'm sure you knew that," as if I wanted another chance. The texts that the ex sent me are nothing interesting though, but one bit she said was that she was helping him get a GF by letting him practice on her. Although that's not what I saw at all. Maybe it's just me, but I feel that's something you should ask your partner about, so if they see it wouldn't be taken out of context. The best part? He doesn't talk to her anymore, so I hope it was worth her becoming single over. Can provide evidence if needed, as long as you're cool with pictures of a computer screen taken from a phone. Half-brothers threaten to sue me over 16K. It costs them 158K and possibly their parents' marriage. When I, 25F, was 3, my grandparents passed away. They set up a savings account in my name. The account was meant to be accessed by me when I was 21. At that point it contained just over 300K. My grandparents left me a letter saying they would like me to share the money fairly with any other Smith-Jones children, meaning my full siblings. Dad's a Smith, Mum's a Jones. By fairly they meant that they wanted me to assess the situation and judge for myself what was fair. I never had full siblings, but I have 2 half-brothers, Mac and Joe Smith, who are dad and stepmom's kids. Due to the specific wording my grandparents used, I legally never had to give Mac or Joe any money. However, I see Mac and Joe as my brothers, and as the money came from our grandparents, I felt that the fairest thing would be to assign each of us 100K, so we all got an equal-sized lump sum, and I figured that when Mac, the youngest, turned 21 and took his 100K, we could split any remaining money. When I turned 21, Dad suggested I buy a house with my 100K. I found a place I loved, but it was 130K and I couldn't get a mortgage, so Dad said I should borrow 30K from the account. I did, figuring I could pay it back before my brothers turned 21, and I have been repaying it. The account should be at 208K right now, but due to me withdrawing and then repaying that money it's at 195K, so I still owe 13K. Joe turned 21 recently, and as I was giving him his 100K, Joe noticed that there was less in the account than there should be. I explained and said I was going to put it all back before Mac, now 19, turns 21.0. Joe told Mac, and both boys said I stole from them and owed them the full 13K back plus 3 grand of interest that they felt they would have gotten, and they wanted it all paid by this summer, which gave me less than 6 months to bring the account up to 211K. I said I'd do it, but over 2 years as planned. The boys then wrote up a contract to that effect. I went to sign it, until I saw that it said 6 months to pay it all back. I wouldn't sign as we agreed on 2 years. They said I should figure it out as they were entitled to that money and would be seeking legal advice. Later that day I got an email, clearly written by them, saying that they intend to sue me for the 16K, plus whatever is currently in the account, and additional damages and emotional distress on top of that. At this point in time, I'd given Joe about 50K of his 100K, because he wanted it in installments. I responded that legally, they were never entitled to any of it, and given their attitudes, I'd say they've already received an amount I deem fair, so that 50K was all they were getting. I then got a barrage of texts, calls, and emails yelling at me for going back on our deal. I blocked them. They then took to social media, saying that I was trying to screw them out of their inheritance and rallying our extended family into harassing me over this, and it mostly worked as a lot of people messaged me. However, I got a message from this guy called Chris Smith. Chris said he was 27, and claimed to be my half-brother. I had never met him before, but he sent me photos of him as a kid with our dad, grandparents, and me. He showed me that he also had an account with 150K in it, and a scan of a letter from our grandparents, saying this money was meant to be shared fairly among dad's illegitimate children. Chris also told me we have another half-sibling, who is 18. He'd been looking for me for a while, but only found me when dad shared Joe's post which had me tagged .0. We checked with a solicitor to make sure, and as the boys are legitimate, they aren't entitled to anything in Chris' illegitimate kid fund, and as they are my half-siblings, they aren't entitled to anything in my Smith Jones kids fund, either. I sent the boys a letter formally telling them to back off, stop posting about me online, and enjoy the 50K because it's all they're getting. The day they received the letter, Chris got a PM from dad, asking if the boys can have some of Chris' fund. Chris also said no, and told dad we'd met. I told Mac and Joe about Chris and our other half-sibling, with Chris' permission. So it looks like my grandparents, knowing about Chris before they passed, set up two funds. One for the kids dad had with my mother, who was still his wife when they passed, and one for children born out of dad's affairs, presumably to make sure no one tried to screw anyone else over out of hurt feelings. I'm getting a lot of shit, but holding firm on my decision. The boys have realized that I won't back down on this, and it sounds like I've caused a schism at their house, as Joe has all the money and no intention of sharing, so Mac is now feeling twice as screwed, plus stepmom apparently did not know about the other half-siblings, or that my half-sister was born after she and dad got married, and she's made dad move into a hotel. It sounds like dad is looking for a long-term living arrangement outside of the family home, because it looks like she is not letting him move back in. Dad is begging me to reconsider, but honestly I'm done with all of them except Chris and my sister. Trash your own manager and department? You get to do a presentation. True story, names changed, years ago, yada, yada, yada. Chad was an engineer with a planning and support department for a portion of his company's infrastructure that impacted virtually every other part of the company. Unfortunately, Chad was a real asshole. During less than a year with the company, he had thoroughly trashed everyone in his department to anyone who would listen. He talked about their incompetence, their screw UPS, which were generally minor, and most importantly their failure to properly support the very mission-critical infrastructure they were responsible for. Every hiccup that occurred, however minor, was used as ammunition. What Chad told everyone who would listen eventually made it up to managers and directors throughout the company. That wasn't enough though. Chad made the mistake of trashing his own director who was also his manager. Over the next few months there was no one even remotely involved with his department who didn't know what Chad was doing, including that manager. Chad's manager and director was Tim, a pretty crappy manager by most measures. He paid about 40% less than the industry average and had a staff of B and C players because of it, but he nevertheless expected absolute dedication from that staff. If he could have had them wash his car and pick up his dry cleaning, those things would have been added to their job descriptions. Tim was also pretty poor when it came to understanding what his own staff did and routinely made things up about their work while talking to other people. Everyone involved knew he was full of crap because what he said made no sense at all. Most rolled their eyes, but people also knew that Tim was a force to be reckoned with. Despite his shortcomings as a manager, the one place Tim excelled was corporate politics. He was able to consistently come through failures without a scratch when those failures would have sidelined anyone else. Tim would deftly play opponents off one another, then stand back and watch the fireworks. He had been at it for years and seemed to have a Teflon coating. Crap that stuck to everyone around him would slide right off. Tim, of course, knew exactly what Chad had been saying. Eventually Chad's trashing of his own department became so severe and their reputation so tarnished that a large directors' meeting was called to discuss the situation. The other department directors were out for blood. Enter Tim's pro-revenge. Tim tasked Chad, the very person responsible for the company gossip that resulted in the high-level meeting, with the job of putting together and then presenting a formal defense against his own gossip. Chad had to spend the next couple of weeks creating a formal presentation and repeatedly submitting it to Tim for approval. The meeting rolled around and Chad was forced to stand up in front of a large group of company directors and managers and formally defend his own manager and department. Everyone at the meeting knew they were only there because of what Chad had been saying, and they sat back and watched him tear himself apart and prove the things he, himself had been telling everyone were flat-out lies. Of course Tim and his department came through completely unscathed, but Chad was thoroughly discredited throughout the company and knew it. He left that company for another within 6 months of that meeting and last was heard bad-mouthing everyone involved with his new company. TLDR, Chad was an engineer who trashed everyone around him, including his own department manager. That manager was a master at corporate politics and required Chad to formally defend him and his department in a directors' meeting that was only called because of what Chad had been saying. Chad stood up at the meeting and essentially had to prove that everything he had said about his own department was a lie, completely discrediting himself throughout the company and forcing his departure shortly thereafter.